many ways. And that comes with it, as I'll share with you, some really difficult moments, and a lot of tension and a lot of frustrations in its own right. But I still think it's been absolutely the right thing to do. Now, this is the kind of the suite of things, if you like, that we've developed. There's the Campbell report, there's a brain health strategy, there's a research strategy for Scotland. Wonderful reports, and you'll have been there. You spend hours of really excited, passionate time developing reports, and then they sit on the shelf. So we spent a long time with the Scottish Dementia Research community developing the We Are All Researchers, which put at front and centre the participants, the patients, the public, in terms of driving the research agenda. What happened to it? Virtually nothing. We have the Campbell report, and then we had our Brain Health Scotland strategy. We don't have a dementia strategy. We have a dementia strategy for Scotland. We've also got a brain health strategy. But again, did it really have impact? Does somebody, a 50-year-old in Alloa, know this exists? Are they having any actions that they can take? Is there any? Probably not. So we might pat ourselves in the back and say, hey, look, we've produced a report, but these are means to an end. They're not an end in themselves. And if these things just sit on a shelf, we have failed. We have failed miserably. So that's again why I thought we need to do things differently. And doing things differently is probably one of the biggest challenges for me. Suddenly I'm speaking to investors, okay? Are there any investors in the room? Okay, I can speak freely. So, right, okay, here we go. So you have to change your language. You have to be someone else. Now, you can see in some ways when I'm presenting academic papers, that's my comfort zone. I can talk about p-value, I can walk you through a figure, I can talk about, statistical analysis. Standing in front of an investor says, what's your exit strategy? So looking at the door, going, what's an exit strategy? So you're learning a completely new language. An exit strategy is like basically, how do you sell your company in a few years' time to somebody else for lots of money so that we can get our money back on the investment? And I'm going, well, my exit's when we cure Alzheimer's. And they go, right, they take the next meeting. Because to them, to an investor, that's not necessarily what they want to hear. They want to see a product that's got an exit strategy that's going to have value gain for them, so they're going to make money back on their investment. So that's just one example of some of the challenges. So, and I think the other thing is that, as you're going to see in the next 3 or 4 slides, the way you pitch is very different. In some ways, a little bit uncomfortable, because you're actually having to be a salesman. You're having to be somebody who's trying to sort of get people who are in a room, who are maybe not subject area experts, they don't know anything about Alzheimer's, but they do know a lot about business. So you have to sort of dumb down, maybe not dumb down your language, but communicate in such a way that they understand it. So for people here, you'll see there's a change of tone, where you actually got big, bold statements. Neurological treatment lag behind other diseases, and of course these things are all factually correct. Leading cause of disability, this is the problem statement. This is the kind of the burning raft, as they call it, in the business world. 64% increase in brain health conditions, significantly high risk of dying with neurodegenerative diseases. All the emphasis is on this thing to try and get people's attention, to get them interested in what you're trying to do. But it's then you can see how, dare I say, my credibility, my foundation academically allows me to be in these rooms and say, well, you can ask me a question about any of these statements and I can give you a 5-hour lecture about it. Patient drop-out diagnosed too late. Current healthcare is disjointed. No one's fully dedicated to this. Patient recruitment takes 2+ years. I mean, some of you may be involved. I speak to Niels Prince quite a lot because of what he does with his research centre. But there's a study just starting with Janssen, so I'm not disclosing anything confidential, for a preclinical population, 4-year follow-up, but they've nested into 3-year recruitment to get 480 people. 3 years to find 480 people with preclinical Alzheimer's. It should be 3 weeks. If we had the system set up properly, it shouldn't take 3 years. So that means that wonderful drug, potentially wonderful drug, will be 8 years before they know if it works. And that's a phase 2 trial. We'll then have to do a phase 3 study after that. So that's another. So that could be a decade before this drug, which is developed actually from some EPAD data, actually gets to patients. It's crazy. Okay? And that's because I think the way we've categorized people with Alzheimer's disease, again, in the memory clinic population, people with dementia. So finding people with preclinical or amyloid positive, for instance, or tau positive, out there in the community. There's no system for it. Well, there wasn't any system for it historically. So it's again one of the things that my company, a bit like EPAD, we're going to build a readiness cohort that will allow that to be truncated and abbreviated. So here we go, this hope. You've got to leave them with an upbeat. Why do we're not going to invest in something, a sinking ship. There's hope because of the high number of trials that are out there. There's a market, there's a business to be had in delivering other people's clinical trials. We're dedicated, and we have all the in-house infrastructure. One of the things I learned from EPAD, and I don't want to trigger anybody in the room, but everything took so long because there's so many stakeholders, so many steps you had to go through. There's imaging vendors, there were database vendors, there was all the sites, etc. There's the labs, blah, blah, blah. Scottish Brain Sciences, we have imaging capacity, we have lab capacity, we have our own cohort, we have our own staff, we have our own sites. It's all called vertical integration, or full stack. And that's one of the solutions to not leaving anything to chance. You don't have any external partners unless you can possibly avoid it. And that's where the value comes. Now, I'm not pitching here. It sounds like I'm beginning to pitch. Stop it. It's fine. So I'm just demonstrating and illustrating how life is different in many ways. So this is the approach, engagement, and by the way, Anna, who you saw earlier, who worked in EPAD and worked for Brain Health Scotland, she now works in Scottish Brain Sciences, our head of engagement. So all those learnings about communicating with participants, listening to their voice is embedded within what we do in SBS. So even though we're a commercial life sciences company, we're still driven by what the public and the participant wants. I'll just flick through this for the sake of time about what we do. So we have another cohort study called Iona. But I think I just wanted to show you this slide for the EPADistas in the world. But I could change the heading on this, and this could be EPAD. Okay. So, like I said, we were doing last night, I kind of commercialized EPAD, but looked at what the pain points were in EPAD and tried to sort of smooth them out through a single entity running the whole project. So, laboratories, clinical trial sites, imaging facilities, etc., biobanking, and these things. So, this is what the company is going to do to try and move things forward. I'm just aware there's 10, 15 minutes left, so I want to get to the good bit. So, this is maybe for the last 10, 15 minutes or so, just 2 or 3 slides, because when Ritchie and I met in Geneva, we talked about this over dinner, we talked about it again last night. She thought it would be helpful for me to kind of communicate, share, not just what we're doing, but maybe why we're doing it, which I think I've covered, but also the challenges that have come in trying to set this up. And this is actually a slide I borrowed from, many of you remember Carlos Diaz, who was a project manager for EPAD in Barcelona. And this was in some ways looking at the two parts of Triple Helix, the academic and industry components. And the world is different between industry and academia. So in academia, we enjoy the fact that your work is usually credited to you as an individual. It's your name on the paper, and able with asterisks that says where you work. But what's front and foremost is who you are as a person. Whereas in a company, the individual doesn't matter so much. It's what the company achieves that's front and foremost. In academia, to the most part, I know the early career research is going to shout at me for saying this, but you do tend to have a permanent position. I've already fired 3 people from my company with like an hour's notice, because that's what you have to do. It's brutal, but it's necessary. So people are always at risk within a company, depending on I'm not underwritten by the taxpayer anymore, so you don't have that flexibility. You do get, and you may not feel this, but you do get a lot of freedom to operate within academia. You might have some, guardrails around you by your institution, but for the most part, if you have an idea and you get the grant, you can do it. Whereas in industry, there's no outlaws. Everything is driven by what the company says you should do. So I remember having a conversation with Serge van Dieten, who was my counterpart at Janssen in EPAD, when we changed one element of the protocol. I don't know if you remember this, but we put in saliva sampling, because I thought it was a cool idea. He said, if you'd done that in Janssen, you'd been sacked the next day, because you didn't go through due process. And I was like, oh dear. So very interesting how everything's actually very tightly governed within industry. Incremental knowledge is probably one of the things that can actually be frustrating in academia, because we do take this sort of standing on the shoulder of giants approach, where new publications just move the dial a little bit. Whereas in industry, you need things to be really impactful really quickly, because that's what your investors want, and in my case, it's what the patients want. And that's why timelines in academia and healthcare can be very extended. Now, the problem, as I mentioned, with this Janssen study is the 3-year recruitment period. They can't do anything about it, because they're not a recruitment centre. They have to rely on the health system and the universities to recruit for them. They've outsourced that to where the patients are. So that's why they get so frustrated about how long it takes to set up clinical trials and how long it takes to deliver them, because if it was in their own hands, they would want to do it yesterday. And I think, in some ways, that's where the extended timelines and time pressures is a good example of where they come into conflict. Okay. So the question is it bridgeable? So I think this is my penultimate slide, and it's just sort of a series of personal reflections over the last maybe year or two. When people ask me, who knew me from Alzheimer's community, how do you feel about what you've done? The first response I had was liberated. I felt absolutely liberated from the University of Edinburgh and the structures. I felt incredibly liberated from the NHS. And the NHS in Scotland and the UK is just dying, a very slow death. 2-year waiting list for a memory clinic appointment in Edinburgh, for probably a 30-minute appointment with a doctor who do an MMSE, 25% get a brain scan. It's going backwards in terms of the ability to provide good, high-quality clinical care. So moving myself out of that system, despite working in the NHS for 30-odd years, felt liberating. You also feel empowered. Your decisions, your thoughts, we talked about this again last night dinner, can be prosecuted to the most part, because I say so. As CEO, yes, I have a board, but the board are very good and they tend to support what I think. We can do things really quickly, dynamically, so you feel empowered. And in many ways, responsible in the first 3 positive feelings, and responsibility as a negative feeling. But being responsible, if you've got a strong internal locus of control, which I do, then being responsible is also quite gratifying. If this succeeds, it's my company's success. If it fails, it's my fault, is kind of how I perceive this. But on the other side, despite feeling liberated, it's almost like sort of quantum physics with wave-particle duality. You can feel at the same time 2 completely conflicting emotions. There's also a lot of doubt and uncertainty. When I sit in front of an investor, I'm terrified, because I've never done that before. I stand up in front of you, I stand up in front of 3,000 people at AIC, super calm. Pulse doesn't go over 40. Maybe it should. But I stand in front of an investor, I don't know what I'm doing. I absolutely don't have a clue. So I've been learning a lot about that. It's lovely to be invited to meetings like this, because I felt I might lose my home. Because I had been an academic for 30 years. You were my community. EPAD was my place. And then suddenly I'd left, and I was a CEO on the dark side running a company. And I was really scared that people would come up to me and say, "You're not welcome anymore, you jumped ship, you abandoned us." That hasn't been the case, thankfully. So I wasn't outcast. And the other part is that I've now got 40 staff. It's on me to pay their mortgages in many ways, and that's going to go up to probably 100 by the end of the year. So a lot of sleepless nights, because the buck stops with you, not with your university, not with your healthcare system. It's constant. It's absolutely constant. You'll spend time thinking about your investors, your financial structuring, your big vision, but then you also get an email about an HR issue on the floor. So there's absolute constancy. My wife would tell me, I'm on 24/7. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning scribbling notes about what I'm going to do, because there's no backup. It's just me. And the final thing, which is the loneliness of the CEO program, we're sharing here, but there are, when you walk through an airport bookshop and you see all these business books, and you go, who reads them? I do. I've actually found they're very useful, because there's actually a book my wife got me for Christmas called How to Be a CEO, and oh my god, this must be really cheesy. But no, it was really helpful. There were things in it that were like, it's okay to feel lonely, it's okay to feel outcast, you know? So I was quite supportive. So anyway, so these are the solutions. Being a psychiatrist, focus on the positives. So deliberation, empowerment, responsibility. Let's focus on that, Craig. Let's remember why you did it. So when there's dark days, dark moments, take some wins. Look at what's going well compared to maybe what's being a bit more challenging. The doubt and uncertainty, one of the things I guess as academics and doctors we can be a little bit naughty at is not really listening to other people, not saying, I don't know. Whereas I think when I've broken into this new world, I'm listening a lot to other people, both other CEOs, other companies, investors, people who are very well-meaning. Because a lot of people, you know, at the end of the day, the investors, still a person, they would love us to cure Alzheimer's. Okay, so they still want to it's worth listening to them. The loss of home, I think, comes, the way I've addressed this is about humility, is not to expect that Visha or Giovanni or Bruno or Philip will still play with me. I don't expect that, so I've tried to be a bit more humble than usual and just say, well, it's great, thank you so much for inviting me, thank you for not casting me out. And I think also the sense of being an outcast is why I demonstrate or show the Campbell report. No, we're still here, we should still, life sciences should still be part of trying to cure Alzheimer's disease. Responsibility is building a team, so I've now got a senior leadership team who takes some of the responsibility from me, people like Anna, Joe Milne, who some of you know, etc. So it's structuring the company so it's not sitting with me. There's one word that comes up more than any when I speak to mentors from other CEOs or people who've been through this, and that's the word rhythm. And again, maybe oversharing. I'm not flying home tonight to Edinburgh. I'm going to stay tonight in Utrecht and go home tomorrow. Why? It's better for my sleep. It's better for my rhythm. So you can make decisions that actually help you to go through what is a tough life. So even, you know, people say, why do you go business class? It helps my rhythm. Why do you stay in nice hotels? It helps my rhythm. Why are you staying tonight in Utrecht and not going home and flight back at 10 p.m. tonight to Edinburgh and getting in at midnight and not the next morning at 7 a.m. for my rhythm? We have to protect ourselves. And I don't think that's just true of any CEO or business person. I think it's true of academics. We don't protect ourselves. We were killing ourselves in EPAC. You know that, some of you saw it. We were absolutely strangling ourselves with pressure and stress. We don't look after ourselves enough. And then being misunderstood, the loneliness of CEOs as mentorship is reading those books or speaking to others who've been in the same role. So it's not easy. It definitely hasn't been an easy 18 months, but it's been so worthwhile because I really feel that this company and staying included in this environment in the triple helix or the quadruple helix is yielding results. We have a register that we set up in Scotland in SBS, which is more people registered in 6 weeks than Joint Dementia Research registered in Scotland in 10 years. We have a cohort study now which is seeing 15 people a week. You know, the public love what we're doing. When the public come and see me, when people come and see me in this new, they don't care that we're a company. They don't care that we're, but they're probably quite happy we're a company because they know the NHS is failing as well. What is the one word that people say to me more than any other when they see us about the NHS, about the clinical services? There's lots of words out there, so I'd be amazed if you got it. Abandoned. They feel abandoned by the NHS. 2-year waiting list, half-hour appointment, discharged. Abandoned. What we have in our cohort, in our register, is hospitality, a community. We're going to do things to make sure they never feel abandoned. We're not going to double down on that mistake. So I think we're making a difference. So focus on purpose. This is my last slide. So this is the kind of the gestalt of everything, if you like, that I felt. So early detection, we need to roll out these brain health clinics. And by the way, the company will be doing brain health clinics. But interestingly, we're doing them with employers. I think we talked about this in Geneva. So Scottish Rugby pay us to run the brain health clinic at Murrayfield. We'll have conversations, I'm not going to name names, with very large employers in Scotland to commission us to run brain health clinics. So it's free for the patient. It's free for the person at point of contact. As a principle, I will never give way on. I don't think people should pay for their healthcare. But if the employer pays for it because they value their workforce and indeed value people who retired, insurance companies may want to put this into their portfolio about welfare and vitality, we heard earlier, then maybe they would pay for their members to be seen. We talked about brain disease not being a cognitive disorder, so that means we have to build capacity with imaging laboratory and expertise within the medical clinical community. We have to change the culture. We have to talk about cure. I think we should talk about cure bravely and boldly, and not be we never cure Alzheimer's. Yes, we will. Of course we will. We've cured cancers. You know, we got a vaccine for COVID in like a few weeks. Of course we can cure Alzheimer's. Don't be silly. You know? If you don't say that, get out of the room. Okay, that has to be the ambition. I'm not going to name names, by the way. So, and one of the things that's going to help that a lot is a survivor story. What drove the successes in cancer and HIV was, I had cancer, I had HIV, or I have HIV, but I don't have AIDS, so I'll never get AIDS. We have to have those survivor stories. I had cortical amyloidosis. I had tau that was beginning to spread all through my brain. I don't have amyloid anymore, and the tau stopped spreading. I'm cured. That's what politicians will love. That's what they'll support. So we have to embrace that this isn't simple. This isn't an MMSE. It's not a cloth drawing test. It's going to be CSF. It's going to be PET amyloid. Can you imagine an oncologist being told they can't do FDG PET? Why are we so backwards and coming forward? We demand tau PET. We demand PET amyloid. We demand better ligand supply. Okay? I don't know why we just accept it. Oncologists wouldn't. Orthopedic surgeons wouldn't. HIV clinicians wouldn't have all their tools taken away from them. Why are we so, well, as long as we can get to the MMSE, we'll be fine, thank you. Rubbish. Okay, that has to change. And that's the attitude of embracing the complexity. Oh, it's going to cost so much. Good. It should cost a fortune. It's Alzheimer's that kills you. It's inevitably fatal. It's 1/3 of the population are going to get it. It should be expensive. Next question. So you can see my final point. Be angrier. I think we're just too complicit. This is Stanford. This was academics taking to the streets of the Bay Area, actually in Berkeley, not Stanford, campaigning for their patients with placards saying enough's enough, we need these new drugs for HIV. Where are we? Are we taken to the barricades? No. I think we should. Thank you very much.